All right.
All right. Um, right on. So I guess just starting off, you know what? I'm gonna switch it so I can see you. Thank you for hopping on here. This is basically number two in I don't even know what this is gonna be, but number two in this series. First one was with CJ. We kind of talked about the strong hands, the strong core,
Hmm.
and that you and I had just been kind of chatting here and there, and then I was like, oh man, I kind of want to like move down the chain now. Like talking about the hands. How do we use the hands? I'm like rope flow, like that's a great place to start. So, reaching out to you. You said yes, so here we are, the Movement Collective. Ellie Henson, Hardcore Henson on Instagram, and yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, you just giving a little bit of background about yourself, who you are, what do you do, and we'll take it from there if you're good with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right
So
on.
currently I'm based in San Antonio, Texas, but at the moment I'm in my mom's house in Iowa visiting home. So we're gonna make it work in the living room today. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I got into rope flow almost by accident. A couple, let's see, I think it's November 2020. So
Okay.
somebody sent me slush ropes on Instagram and like, oh,
Right
look at
on.
this cool thing. And I was already like hard into the mace and mace flow, and I was working with my mace multiple times a day.
Nice.
It was my favorite form of movement. And rope flow looked so similar, and I was like, that's another thing. I'm gonna go try that.
Right,
So I
right.
ordered my rope and just absolutely fell in love with it the exact same way as the mace. Um, and then dealing with some injury stopped my mace practice for a while, and so I dove even harder into the rope because it was the most accessible tool for me.
Okay.
And a lot of it is self-taught and self-exploration with a few videos and just talking with people about it and like, hey, how are you doing this thing? Or what do you think about this move? And just learning more and more and more about my body every single time I pick up the tool.
Right on, right on. So if I can just ask, I already have a few questions for you, Ellie, off of what you just said. First being, now that so you started with the mace and now you kind of, I would say more so transition towards rope. I know that I think you still use the mace if I'm not mistaken, but how's your experience between the two now? Like if you were to describe to someone the difference between the mace and the rope, obviously one being weighted first, a little bit lighter. What's your experience between the two then?
I think there's so many similarities between the two tools. I feel
Right.
like my rope practice has enhanced what I do with the mace. I feel like it's
Okay.
made my mace work way more fluid,
Okay.
especially like single arm mace stuff and doing like a lot of sword swings and mills and locomotion with it. And it feels like just an extension of my arm versus like a tool, if that
Right.
makes
Okay.
sense. And
Oh.
I feel like the rope does a lot of the same thing, whether it's two-handed or single arm stuff. There's a
Okay.
lot of the same patterns, but it's again like an extension. Like this morning, I even took my rope for a walk, and I was literally just walking. And I was like, I'm gonna shoot for more head over foot and just see what that feels like while I'm walking.
Yeah, right on. That David Weck getting the head over the
Yeah,
foot. Yeah, yeah. All right, all
yeah.
right. That's all right. Right on. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's awesome. So, and I guess so. Just expanding on that, then the second question I had, which kind of feeds right into that, is you said you were more successful at that time with the rope. Do you mind kind of expanding on what it is to you? And again, for someone who doesn't really understand what success is when using something, or for example, I love the way you said it's an extension of your arm. Like that is so cool to think about. Like hey, I was born with a rope at the end of my hand. Like that's just how it was. Like this. So can you kind of expand on your success in the rope and how it's an extension of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I had my injury, it was a spine injury, so it was very difficult to have anything weighted at the
Right.
time. And so I started to be able to stand for small increments, I started to use the rope because I just was basically laying in bed for 23 hours, nearly 24 hours a day for 3 weeks.
Oh
So I
wow.
needed to start getting movement back into my body. So I started very gently with the rope, just starting to move the upper body a little bit. And I did actually have my mace in bed, and I was doing like grip work, and I was
Right.
walking my hands up and down while I was laying down. But that was the extent. And I noticed that, when I started to want to add swings back in, I noticed this right before the injury happened. Like I would do a 360 and it would hurt.
Yeah.
And I used to teach mace classes every single week,
Right.
group steel mace flow classes, and I had to stop that just because it hurt too much, like especially in rotation.
Oh wow.
So when I started to use the rope, like being a much lighter tool, and being something I could control more easily and get my body used to rotation again and practicing in like safe movement with that with a very small amount of weight, it felt good. It felt
Right.
really good. And it felt like, the more I practiced with it, the more I started to move and feel out my body and practice safety in that movement and teaching my body that was safe again to do that. Then the
Right.
more comfortable I became, the more the practice expanded and yeah, I started to be able to walk with it and move again and
Heck
yeah,
yeah.
and it feels so natural now just to pick up the rope and whether it's again two-handed or one hand, it's just part of me now. It's part of how I move.
Right, right. That I mean, that's incredible. That's really cool. And you speaking about, I'm really interested, and you don't have to share the personal information if you don't want to. Can I ask what the injury was? Because just like I'm just thinking about so much about what I've learned now, and now listening to the Alex Canellis, the Landmine University, and he discusses. I think the guy's name is Sergey or Serge for the spinal engine theory and basically just stimulating the core, from that in to out and using you were saying you were laying in bed using the mace and working on the grip strength and things like that. What do you mind sharing what you experienced, what you went through, or is that kind of like,
No, it's cool. I can talk
okay,
about it.
awesome. All
Um,
right, cool, cool.
yeah, so it was a severe L5 disc herniation and with a tear in L4 also.
Okay,
And I think it was 11 or 12 millimeters, so it was pretty significant.
right,
And I couldn't feel anything from my right hip down through my right toes, specifically
okay,
on the outside, like 3, 4, and 5. And there was severe pain, like debilitating pain where I couldn't put any weight on it, and I could barely stand on the left side without just my whole body seizing up, and
wow,
and I've never felt that kind of pain before.
right,
And so I waited it out for 3 days after it happened because I didn't know what happened.
right,
And then I had to go to the emergency room and take care of it. But
okay,
it took a long time after the initial MRI because my neurosurgeon was like, here's what happened. Come back and see me in 3 months. Here's a reference for a physical therapist.
oh
So I
man,
went to that physical therapist, and it was like 4 exercises of basically nothing. And I knew immediately when I met this person and the things she was doing, I was like, this is not going to help me.
right,
And that's when actually Michael got on a call with me. I think CJ may have gotten on a call with me too while I was laying in bed and helped.
oh wow, seriously,
Yeah,
heck yeah,
yeah, it was super cool of them. And I know I even met with CJ like I think back in March. He was helping me because I've had some re-injuries since then and
right,
haven't quite been able to figure out the problem, which is actually what prompted me to dive into the MDMC. But that's a
right,
tangent story. Um, but yeah, so I started doing my own research on movement, and I did a lot of aqua therapy. So I
okay,
was at the pool, at the public pool, every single day with my cane and like hanging on to my husband and walking through. And
yeah,
um, and yeah, I got into the deep end, so it was about neck deep every time. So the water was holding up my weight, and I was doing a
right,
lot of backwards walking because I started like looking at knees over toes stuff, and so a lot of backwards walking in the pool. With like right next door, the Zumba ladies were doing their aqua Zumba stuff, and it was awesome.
right,
And they were always like cheering me on and stuff. They were cute. And yeah, so then I was able to like do a little bit less deeper water over time. Um, and they start, see my progression. And I was still using a cane for a while. Um, Probably, I think I was still using a cane in September. This happened last July. But it was slow progress, but it was good progress. And then I was feeling really good in October. And uh, like my Instagram name, sometimes I go too hard. So it's been a learning experience. Yeah, because I was feeling so good. I was like, I'm going to pull an 80-pound sled
right,
around my waist.
right.
Not the best idea. But
Right.
it's been a cool learning experience, to say the least, about how my body works and how I am specifically like set up.
Right.
So it's been fascinating,
I
very
mean that
fascinating.
I got a little bit emotional there as you were telling that. Super inspirational. First off, super inspirational, and I might get emotional again as I talk. But right now, it's just ignore me if I do. But that is so big in terms of, I guess, just really, if I'm going to say anything, connecting to you and how I think that
Mhm.
it's unfortunate that an injury like that happened. Like we don't want people to experience that, but then when it does happen, you have an opportunity, right? And that was a huge catalyst for you to be able to explore yourself. And like, just a huge shout out to you for going through that process and taking it by the horns and doing the research and figuring out a way to get yourself. I mean, if I would like to say, seeing you now, I would like to say in better physical strength or better movement ability capacity now than possibly before. Um, so that's huge, Ali. That is really cool. That is a huge. That's so inspiring,
Thank you.
especially being in this industry and you meet so many people that have very similar experiences. I'm not going to say the same, but similar experiences, and they go the opposite way. They shut down. They are bedridden for years. They are seated. They're still using a cane. So that's huge. That's really cool. That's a very inspiring story. And good for you, bro. That is beast right there. Heck yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, my next goal is I really want to run a Spartan race. So
Right on. Right on.
the running is going to be my next thing to tackle. See
Yeah,
how
yeah,
I
yeah.
can
Heck
teach
yeah.
my body. Like I was telling you in that cardio session the other day, like I wanted to see how I
Yeah.
was starting to absorb impact.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so I'm really fascinated by the propulsors and how that can influence. And yeah, I'm gonna start exploring that next.
Yes, awesome. Very cool. Excited to see this journey without a doubt. Very cool. Um, just out of curiosity, real quick, and then we can kind of get into some movement here. But so how did you come into contact with Gymnazo, with Michael, with CJ, with MDMC? So was that part of your research, or did someone refer you, or how did that happen?
That was actually way before the injury, or even
Oh,
before
okay.
I was starting to feel anything. I think we just found each other on Instagram with rope stuff, and I
Right
think we just
on.
started like
Okay.
tagging each other in rope stuff
Yeah.
because it was fun. Like I remember very specifically. I think it was Goose was doing like these backward releases in a dragon roll,
Yeah.
and I was like, I want to learn that, and so I started to learn it, and I was like, okay, how can I take it to the next level? So I was like, I'm gonna stand on a medicine ball and do this.
All
And
right. Yes. Let's
so then I
go.
did it, and it was like, but because the rope is such a joyful object, anytime you pick it up, I can't be mad. Or if I start out mad, like that is dissipated by the end of my session. So it's
All
just
right.
such a fun, joyful tool. And I remember that exact moment at the gym, just moving and releasing and like laughing like a kid, and
Yeah.
that's I think is a huge part of also connecting with yourself, is finding that joy in the movement too. Because some people are, they're like serious, like you got to go hard, but the play is such an important aspect for the sustainability and the longevity of it.
Ah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I was having a conversation about sustainable practice just yesterday, so I hear that. But it's really interesting. I think I shared a little bit with you about what I'll say is like my mace and my rope flow journey. Both were just drastically different than I had known in my entire fitness movement career. And yeah, I mean, even so, speaking to the joy and the happiness there are definitely times, depending on where I am, I have an intent that I want to move a certain way, right? Like, so a figure eight pattern or the matador, something, I have an intent in mind of how I want my thoracic spine to move and how I want to kind of like trigger the body's response. However, even with a strong intent, sometimes I realize I'm bringing an emotional energy into it that maybe does not align with my intent. And I find that I almost am aggressive with the rope flow. Like I'll get into it and I realize like I'm flying through, I'm whipping it as fast as I can. I'm like, why am I so intense right now? You know, like what's really going on inside of me right now? Because I'm so intense. But my intent is like I want to move my thoracic spine, but I'm like, yeah. So it's really interesting that you say that because I think CJ said every move is an expression, right? Every lift is an expression. Everything we do is an expression of ourselves, of a deeper intent, of a drive, and it really comes to light. I think, especially when you start using some of these tools. I mean, my mace journey so far, like I think I've done about 7,000 mace 360s. I'm not kidding you. I think I'm close to 7,000 now, and I am in love. I am in love, Ellie. Like it is crazy. So anytime I just had someone, I think 2 days ago, say, "How's it going with the mace?" I'm like, "Oh my goodness, thank you for asking." Like, let me tell you how
Let
it's
me
going.
go.
Yeah. So I hear you. So you want to get into some movement, some flow?
Do it.
All right. All right. So first and foremost, I have two sizes. If you were to start working with someone new, how would you recommend sizing of the rope for that individual?
So my favorite is to at least get a 1 pound rope in their hands, if not
Okay.
slightly heavier, because it's going to give them really good feedback for
Okay.
how their body is moving. So the light ropes are good as well, but I would save those for further practice. And at the start, I want some weight in your hands so you can
All
start to
right on. Okay.
feel it. Like
Okay.
this is about maybe 1.5, 2 pounds or so.
Okay.
A
Okay.
little
Yeah,
bit
definitely,
thicker.
definitely a little bit thicker than the ones I have. I think these are the lighter ones. Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I love that pink color, man.
Yeah, it's awesome. It was a neon pink, neon yellow, and then there's a neon purple that I gave away as a gift over Christmas time. So yeah. The
Oh,
neon
nice.
color, they had a little slush, had a little package. So I was like, yo, let's go.
Yeah. I got my
There
mom
you
this
go.
this one for Christmas.
Heck yeah, there you
Yeah.
go. Right on. All right, let's do it to it. Take me through it.
All right, man. So you mentioned the figure eights, so we're going to start with our figure eights, right?
Okay.
And we have our underhand figure eights, which is like swinging a tennis racket, palm up towards the sky. It's like a
Yeah.
golf swing. And
Okay.
we're going to go single arm with that just to start
Okay.
out. So
Okay.
nice, easy, natural rotations. You can already see how that's just impacting the body. And then as soon as the rope hits the ground, we're going to transfer it into our free hand. Hits the
Okay.
ground and transfer. Just to get a little bit of rotation going. And back to the other side. And then we're going to have one hand on each handle, still on one side of our body. Beautiful. And that same transfer we just did, now we're going to hit one time per side. Transfer, transfer. Nice. So already if you notice how your body's moving, your shoulders are dipping side to side, your hips are moving. We're going to have a slight bend in the knees. And then I want you now to drive the elbows up even a little bit higher.
All right. Okay.
See how that feels. So the elbow's going to pass by the earlobe.
Ooh, you're getting it up high then. Wow.
It feels a little bit different. It changes how your thoracic spine is moving just a bit and how much we're digging into the shoulder rotation.
Right. Yeah, I'm trying to get the elbow up there, but yeah, that's definitely a movement that I don't think comes very natural to me right now.
Yeah, and go ahead and relax. Yeah, it's super fascinating, like how good this feels, but how like when I first started to try to do it, my body felt so locked into it. So
Right.
a great way to start accessing that is to put your fists together and like lock your knuckles in. So
Okay.
think about applying like 20% pressure or so,
Okay.
and then elbows go to the side in a straight line. So you're making one straight line, elbow to elbow,
Right.
and then pushing that back, scooping forward as the other one is now drawing up. So you're having a little bit of push here and a little bit of pull here.
Okay.
And So you're getting this big open rotation. So you're basically drawing an infinity sign.
There you go. All right. All right.
You're drawing a figure eight, yeah.
Right.
And so
Wow.
then
Yeah.
as you think also, you can think about that coiling core, like
Yeah.
contracting and expanding, contracting and expanding.
That is first. So that in my maze journey right now, I've been trying to open a lot of that matted down tissue on my right, and I can feel it right here too as I'm doing that. That right side of the rib cage is trying to lift up, but it's just not getting there. Like, yeah, okay, I hear you. I hear you. That's awesome. Right on.
Yeah, and then once you add the rope back into that, you can feel it just a little bit easier.
Okay.
Big sweeps. I think I'm about to knock down the fan here in my mom's
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I hear
living
you.
room. And then you can see how slow you can go with the float of the rope. You can see how fast you can go. There's a lot to play with.
Right. It's funny because maybe that's part of it is like the tempo of the swing. I'm more inclined to go a little bit faster, and I saw you were going at a nice leisurely pace, and I'm trying to do that, and I feel uncomfortable the slower I go. Like I'm like, what am I doing right now?
Yeah, usually when we slow things down, it feels uncomfortable, and that's okay.
Right.
Cool. How's that feel?
Good, good. I feel I'll tell you what, I feel the rock in motion, the kind of just that rib cage,
Yeah,
that
that like,
thoracic spine. Yup.
yeah,
Yeah.
shoulder rocking back. So there's a progression that I like to do with this as well.
Okay.
I didn't come up with this. I got it from a friend, but it's excellent.
Right on.
So you take one foot into kickstand while you're doing this movement. I think I can do
Okay.
it in here. Oh, there we go. And then you drop into a lunge, and you're there for like 30 seconds or so. And
Okay.
then you rise up into your single leg balance while
All
trying to
right.
maintain and maybe not hitting the fan, but
Right.
and then even in that lunge, it's really trying to pull you side to side, so it works on a lot of your proprioceptors and stabilization, and especially that single leg, like driving that
Oh, yeah.
standing leg into the ground, and then trying to maintain that big elbow drive and rotation.
Yeah,
Feels
there's a
so
lot.
good.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and I used to do this every single day as part of my like recovery journey. And
Heck
so
yeah.
my single leg balance has really helped like stabilize my entire body.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, obviously I'm feeling that as soon as I'm coming up through that, every time I'm going to my left for that underhand, my whole body just kind of wants to follow that path to the left. Yeah.
Hmm.
I hear that for sure.
Yeah,
Heck
so
yeah.
that one, like that pattern feeds really well into the matadors, right? So we have that's our underhand figure eight, and
Right.
then driving into this still scooping motion. And I really like to exaggerate the bottom scoop as we transfer from one side to to the other. Feels like a really beautiful reach across your body.
Okay.
And this is one of the times where I really feel like the rope is an extension. Like I'm sending it out as far as I can and I'm digging into the side.
So so you're speaking to, as you're doing that underhand, if I'm going to go to my left side, my right hand is coming through that a little bit further and then
Yeah.
up and through. Okay.
And that's just something I like to do. Like that's an inflection of this
Okay.
movement. You
Right.
know, doesn't have to be. You can stay neutral with your matador. You
Right.
can reach. Even if I'm reaching, I can maintain the tempo or I can add a
Right.
whip to the
Okay.
bottom with that extension. It just depends
Right.
on
Right.
the
Almost like
intent.
a little flick.
Hmm.
Oh, that's over here.
So there's a lot of cool things that you can get out of it, going back to like what is your intention behind the movement.
Right on. Yeah. I was just thinking. So that flick.
That like whip.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the greater you're reaching through, the more you're asking that thoracic to really open up to that side or rotate to that side. Yeah. Okay. Really cool.
Yeah, and Then if you let that foot pivot as well, okay, what if I put a golf club in my hand now?
Oh, right on.
The
Oh, there
same
you
movement.
go. Okay.
Like I've only ever played mini golf. I want to just be clear with that. But
Oh, hey, but
I
that
have seen it.
right. But that's it. And that's a great point. That's a really good point because there was podcasts that I listened to. This was quite a while ago now, and I actually think it was Michael Hughes, and I'm trying to remember who else. But he was basically saying like, "Look, I haven't played every single sport, but he's like, I can look at you and I know your movement." And he's like,
Hmm.
that's what the root of this is. If I can see you move, then I can take you through that. So I'm like,
100%.
oh yeah. Right on. Heck yeah.
Yeah, and then opportunity now to play with the opposite direction, right? So then we have our overhand figure eights, our overhand matadors, and that's generally the palm is facing down towards the ground.
Right.
That's the rope is slamming down towards the ground, that overhand, right? That dribbling a basketball
Right.
motion, that spiking a volleyball motion. You're going to practice that same follow through, right?
Okay.
Crossing the body and
Right.
getting more of this long side and across the back, those slings getting involved.
Right on. Okay.
So this one I really like to even bend my knees more.
Okay.
And I've
And
really started, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, just in terms of foot position there, for someone new trying this, do you recommend a more narrow stance or should they go a little bit like they're neutral wherever their feet land?
I like to have them go neutral because what I've
Okay.
noticed with new people with the rope is they'll tend to stand generally too close together and then they'll try to do this to get their hips
Okay.
and butt out of the way of the rope because they feel like the rope is going to hit them. And that's the
Oh,
same thing that I noticed with mace clients as well. So having more of a neutral stance and having them extend out top rather than trying
yeah.
to minimize what's going on here helps them start to get more access to these movements
Right
rather
on.
than just being afraid of what the rope is going to do to them.
Right on. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Because if the rope hits you while your legs are in neutral, that means that it's trying to tell you you need to reach further and you need to
Yes, for
rotate
sure.
more.
For sure.
Because you can do this in like a lateral stance, right? But you
Right.
just have to practice with the timing of the rope. You could
Right.
do it again in a wide stance, but that means you need to make an adjustment for what's going on up top.
Right on. Okay. Now, what? So that's foot position for someone who's maybe learning the basics there, learning foundations of it. What about elbows, hands, shoulders? So, in speaking to that, let's say you cue someone for that neutral stance, maybe a little bit wider than they're used to, just to get that foundation, try and get that sensory feedback. Now, what about hands? Do you like to see someone kind of drifting out away from the body, or do you want elbows tucked and working that motion?
So primarily, again, it does depend on intent, but for new folks, I like to see what they already do naturally. So I don't
Right.
over cue at the beginning, and then I'll start to just ask them to tweak, like elbows away from the rib cage. How does that feel? I'll start to ask for extension in their matadors, in their figure eights. What does that feel like to them?
Okay.
And I
Okay.
always ask folks which one feels more natural, overhand or underhand, and it's about 50-50.
All right.
It's
Interesting.
really
Okay.
it's really fascinating. Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of folks, especially in dragon rolls, will say that their non-dominant side feels better to them.
Huh.
It's easier
Interesting.
for them
Okay.
to grasp onto the movement. Yeah, so I'm just like, what are they doing naturally? All right, now let's start to tweak those, and that's just a different expression of what they are specifically doing. Try
Yeah.
this out. Try this out. How does this feel? Does it make it easier, harder, or is it just a different way to think about it?
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. All right.
So like I was watching you moving naturally, and you're doing a lot of rotation with your wrists right here, which is cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now go ahead and just turn that into an overhand matador.
Okay.
Open it up, 2 beats per side. So now keep going with that, but what if you add more reach out in front?
More reach across in front.
Yep. How does that feel?
Now I'm feeling my shoulder blades kind of shift in across that.
Cool. Now, what if we brought that chest level reach and we brought it a little bit higher?
Oh, interesting. All right.
More of a downward angle. How's that feel?
I feel like I'm including more of my hips. Trying to think of how to.
Yeah, do your feet want to stay stuck or do they want to naturally pivot too?
So I actually felt more grounded. I think that's what I was meaning by my hips.
Cool.
I felt more tension coming up through the ground I feel very structured in that, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Now we're going to throw a wrench in that and do the same movement with the same reach, but take your left foot into a kickstand, a staggered stance.
All right.
Good. And add an even higher reach now as you move across your body. Yeah, perfect. Then what if you keep going with that, but you switch your feet?
Oh, that's interesting.
Nice.
I actually feel way more balanced, stable. I felt much more grounded on my left foot than I did on my right. My right, I could feel it, kind of grabbing.
Wiggling.
My left, as soon as I planted, I felt much more structured there, much better foundation through the foot.
It's fascinating, right?
Yeah, heck yeah.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and there's like now more body awareness for you. And what the rope is showing you, especially in movement, because that's really what you're doing there, is walking in a sense.
Yeah.
That can simulate that and what's happening on a deeper level there.
Right on. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Gosh, so interesting. Yeah, I'm like, man, oh man, it's just, I think, yes, I've had conversations with communities, with people, and just trying to bring some awareness to, and I think part of the reason why this is such a good tool or extension of yourself is because it's almost exaggerating what you do, but helping you become better at it. And I guess what I mean by that is it's very interesting to have that conversation with someone and talk about the counter rotation or whatever, if you want to keep it layman's terms. But as this right foot stepping forward, I'm creating this shift to where my body is trying to align over that, and so on and so forth, where if you demonstrate that to people, most of them be like, wait, really? My body does that, And so it's this, when you get the rope, it almost comes so naturally to try and align over that front foot and then back through. So that's just a beautiful thing, I think. Just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then once they feel comfortable with those patterns in like a static stance, I always like to have them take it for a walk.
Oh, so nice.
Now can you do like figure eights moving forward, moving backward? Can you do matadors? Forward, backward. Same thing. Drag rolls, forward, backward. And then how does that feel? And then can you walk and have a conversation with me about it?
Yeah, all right, all right.
Walk, do it, tell me what you had for breakfast. Because the more that you can do that and keep the pattern looking beautiful and integrated, the more that it is integrated into their body.
Right.
And it's going to start becoming part of their natural pattern.
Part of the DNA, baby. Yeah, for sure.
That's right.
So in speaking to that, that was actually one of the questions I came into this session with. So how does progression look for you working with someone? I guess even for your personal practice, how long do you stick with, let's say you're sticking with the figure eight. How long do you work with the figure eight with someone? and then kind of say, okay, and now we're going to try the Matador, and now we're going to incorporate some sagittal plane progression or something along those lines? What does the progression look like there?
Yeah, so in my
Oh,
Exe's just died. Okay. Can you still hear me?
yeah, I got you now. I got you.
Yeah. So in my virtual class, I would say that we go at a decent pace through the progression because it's a 4-week course. So I want to provide a large foundation of movements for them to take into a personal practice and to keep exploring, like starting to
Okay.
what they can do.
Right.
Matadors and figure eights, I feel, are very accessible, and we'll also learn the cardinal directions as well.
Okay.
Those people can grab onto, I think, in the first session. Now,
Right.
whether perfect or not, that's not a concern of mine at that moment. It's can they get the pattern? Can they remember the pattern and start to move with it? Because it's going to integrate more and more and more and more every single day.
Right.
Doing that and matadors, and sometimes I'll introduce drag rolls at the end of the first session. If not, that's one of the first things in the next session. And then I have, I think, 5 different variations on dragon rolls that we'll go through to show them all the ways that they could possibly start to think and then more about what they do for them.
Right.
So for me, for my personal practice, I always like to do all those fundamentals or foundational practices because it feels good, and it's always good to continue to hone in those foundations and see where I can still tweak it for myself, where I can still make it better.
Right.
Finding things like almost 2 years into this practice about how I can feel my body differently and create more awareness for myself within a figure eight pattern.
All right.
Dragon roll pattern. So that's been really, really cool to continue even in those foundational movements. Same thing, like I come from a musician background, so it's the same thing. Like I'm always going to be practicing my scales, but how can I make the sound more beautiful? How can I make the articulation better? How can I do like 5 different articulations and still make it sound beautiful, fluid, and at the level of like somebody playing in the New York Philharmonic, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
I think those should always be part of anyone's practice every single day, or at least, you know, a few times a week for as long as you are participating in it, you know?
Right. Right.
Yeah, and then from there, whether I have like an intention, I will say I do play a lot, and so sometimes that is just my intention, and I'll see what my body moves through, and I just flow a whole lot. So I do a lot of unplanned movement with the rope.
Right.
Then I'll go back if I notice something like that catches my attention mid-flow, then I'll go back and I'll be like, all right, well, how's this feeling, or why is this feeling this way? Or if I record myself and watch back, I'm like, these sides don't look even. Cool, let's go figure that out.
Right. Awesome. Okay, that makes a lot of sense and really good insight. Now, in terms of so speaking to the progression, the 4-week program, do you find that, do you market to a certain clientele or target population, or do you find that there's a certain population that's more attracted to what you're offering? And in speaking to that, I guess, how does it look? So if it's a 4-week program, how long do you end up actually working with someone? You know, have you been working with some people for years on end, and what does their development look like through that? And then also, in speaking to this, do you bring in other tools into the practice? So if you have someone for a rope flow 4-week progression course, are you ever going body weight and dropping in a prone position, or do you ever pick up dumbbells? How does that look for you and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, those are great questions. So it's always been really hard for me to market to a specific target audience because I have that mentality of I want it to be in everyone's hands. I want it to be available for everybody. And so I've tried to, make those target clienteles, and I always find myself at roadblocks.
Right.
So I've stopped doing that in a sense, and I put it out there, and whether that's the best way or not at the moment, I don't know, but that's what I'm currently doing. And I find that I've connected with a lot of other enthusiasts who want to deepen their practice. Connected with several other coaches who want to add it to their either personal practice or they want to utilize it with their clients and they see the benefit and they want to learn like, all right, well, this is the progression or this is a way to progress it. This is a way to teach it. These are a set of cues I could use. So I provide all of that. Sometimes it's people who are just simply curious about the tool and they want to learn more. Or a lot of, I've noticed like more in person, I would say, than virtually now, people with injuries.
Okay.
Had quite a bit of that. And with a varying population of that, but I say the folks with injuries are generally like 40 and up. And I think my oldest client, I'm actually not sure how old she is, but I think she's in her 70s. And she has, man, this lady is a rock star. She's run the gamut of injuries and surgeries, like on literally every part of her body. She gets her nerve endings burnt off, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Oh, wow.
Like in her spine too. And so she's very much like this, but her evolution with the rope has been the most amazing thing to watch. She's been with me for 6 months now, and she moves a whole lot better. She walks a whole lot better. She walks and moves with less pain.
Yeah.
Because we started out with some strength training and some rope training, and one, she just really loved the rope, and two, some of the other things were still causing her pain, and so I started to calibrate. And then at one point we were just focusing on the rope because it didn't cause her any pain at all. And then we moved more and more, and she just absolutely fell in love with it. So it's so much fun to meet with her. We just meet once a week, and she does some stuff on her own, and she goes with it. It's super cool. But I think one cool thing about rope flow is that, you know, not many people in San Antonio do it, but there's a ton of people on like Instagram who do it.
Right.
You want to connect with others and learn more about like how are they doing this thing, and it's cool to like, all right, well, this is how you're doing it, this is how I'm doing it, and there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration. So I say, not necessarily having a target audience at the moment, but with the intent of just trying to spread the practice and get more people to be aware of it.
So I guess in speaking to that though too, I mean, I hear you. I definitely hear you on that. I've run into very similar experiences when I've tried to target and really fine tune my message and my vision and the why I'm looking to connect with certain populations of people. I've run into certain roadblocks. However, especially speaking to you, I know the kind of the band community background, right? And how you're connecting with them. So if you don't mind, I would love for you to share kind of what you're doing there. I thought that was so cool, especially when it came to, you put a post up about the foot positions that they go through, the injuries that they have. So if you don't mind, I would love to hear a little bit more about that, what you're looking to do with that. Because I think that is kind of one of those target populations, or at least that is a community in which can directly benefit from this type of movement. So
100%. So I've been in marching band since I was like in 8th grade. So literally up until like 6 months ago or so. So it's something that I've always absolutely loved. I loved how I did it in high school. I participated in my college marching band. I attended like drum corps camps, like band camps, like the whole gamut. And I still play. I play trombone. But what I did have noticed, like I mentioned, is a change from this foot position to this foot position over time. So I did several polls on a few Facebook groups about, why? Just why do you do that? No judgment, just tell me why you pray. And and I was wondering, like, you know, subconsciously, if it was more aesthetically pleasing than anything else. It was more of that.
Interesting.
And so I feel like the answers that I got were more like things that had been passed down to them about why they do it, rather than actually thinking about it, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of folks said like more stability, better deceleration when they're stopping, better push off when they're starting to travel, better change of direction. So I started thinking about that, and then comparison, like, now this is at the end of the MDMC. I'm like, feel feel like there's some discrepancies there.
Right.
My brother-in-law is also a band director, and so I asked him. I started talking about this with him. He goes, "Yeah, why did we do that? I'm gonna change it back. You make a line." And I was like, "Okay." And he goes, "Yeah, and I want to start changing the way we do things because there's so much. One, Texas is highly competitive in marching band, like crazy, but kind of cool. Uh, and two, like you basically have to have the fluidity and vocabulary of a ballet dancer if you want to compete at a high level in marching band now.
Right.
Especially on a national level. There is so much body choreography that goes into it that they just call visuals that enhance the performance, yes, and they're super fun generally for the kids, but they require a lot of movement these kids are not used to.
Right.
They're not trained like the color guard, and they wear very thick shoes that are restrictive, and they wear uniforms that are generally made of wool, and you zip them up super tight, and they're hard to move in.
Interesting.
So I have a lot of thoughts about like how, you know, all of those things contribute to the lack of movement, because you always want your horn, you know, facing the audience primarily. Right. If you're playing, you want the sound to go forward towards the audience.
Right.
Maybe I have to manipulate my hips to go this direction, but that's going to take my torso here. So I have to wrench my torso around to make sure if I need to travel directly to the right, but my torso needs to be 90 degrees the opposite direction, like that has to be available. And that's one of the most difficult things.
That's like an advanced position. Like that to be able to hold that type of tension in position and then add motion to it, like that, like we're talking about, some people have to work for months at this to try and understand that type of tension and position. That's crazy.
Yeah, and we're like, you need to do it right now because we have an 8-minute show to learn and put on
right.
in like 4 weeks. So we got to and so the learning curve is so incredibly high, and you're out there for multiple hours a day, like moving in the morning block and trying to get all this movement learned. So I think there's a healthier way to do it, because over my years as a band director, I started to notice injuries started to go up. And it's hard when one person is missing out of a formation. It really is hard for the kids to make that formation happen cleanly, because they use that person as a visual guide for where they're supposed to be on the field. And so like if one person is out with an injury, whether that be for a few reps or whether that be for a week, it really halts the overall like learning of the entire ensemble. Not that there's not learning happening, but it could be better, right? And that kid participating rather than being injured from something that could have, not that necessarily everything we do will prevent, but could possibly be prevented with some of the things we've now learned about it. So when I went to do a movement clinic with my brother-in-law, because I also have a deep love for creating visuals and choreography, like I nerd out hard about it. I'm like, okay, I'll listen to music and be like, how does it, okay, can I do this and this? And then if I have a horn in my hand, how can I like move like from here into like a 4-starch and bring it back up and then step to the side and like,
right.
You know, while executing music potentially. So it's so much fun. You can tell like I'm getting really excited about talking about it.
Yes, good.
So anyway, so I did this clinic. It was supposed to be a couple of days, but I was also working another music camp at the time, so the timing didn't work out, but they're back in mid-July. So I had a whole bunch of stuff planned, and we mostly did just some building body awareness. I told him that was going to be my first goal, because it's, you know, now kids, especially after going through COVID, I feel have way less body awareness than ever.
Right.
Sitting down a majority of the day, and a lot of them still go to school sitting down for a majority of the day, and now they're not even being necessarily instructed, but they're doing stuff on computer. So there's just zero input, right? Input. And so that was my number one goal, was to just start building body awareness.
Yeah.
I started talking, and we basically built up the lunge matrix, and then built it up so they could do it without me cueing them. And they could start to remember the sequence themselves. And then the other visual staff that was there was starting to dig into it too, walking around, helping the students feel like when their foot was a certain way, because I wanted them to feel what their feet were going to be like straight on, as if they were doing something for the marching show.
Right.
There's so many folks that are just like way turned out now.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool, I think, for them and for all of the staff, because we all talked about it afterward. It was really fun. So the kids started to dig into it a little bit. One, it looks really cool without the horn, but imagine like a horn in the hand and doing portions of that, and then being able to add on, like, what if I am in this transverse plane lunge and then I pivot and I can pivot back around, and now the horn is back again at the audience, and maybe there's so there's room to build and play and create from even that. It's so amazing, and so I'm excited to see where that goes. And with starting, those kids are going to be my first, like, quote unquote test band, if you will.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot that can be learned. And I don't know if it's possible to put ropes in everyone's hands, because a marching band is like 150 to, like, the school I worked at, we had 300 kids in the marching band.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if that's possible, but it could be. It could be
Right.
possible. If
Right.
given resources and time, or if I figure out a way to create the resources and the time, I think that would be pretty killer. And I would love to do it on a large basis, like a large district-wide basis. So
Right.
the school I used to work for was part of the 4th largest school district in the state of Texas.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of room to play.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, even taking what you just taught me about bringing the knuckles together, giving that 20%, like, until maybe some resources become available, even creating that type of motion through that as like a basic, like, so that is so cool on so many levels. And I think that really extends, once again, that influence or possibility to influence really extends a little bit further as well. I think I shared with you that I've worked with, I don't know how it happened, but I just happened to work with quite a few that have dancing backgrounds. Some of it ballet, some of it a little bit more of like the salsa and things like that. But they always have this common toes turned out, open hips, always. And it's so interesting to not only see, unfortunately, there are usually hip issues involved with that. Every now and then I'll get some knee issues involved with that. But ankles are vulnerable, and their ability to essentially propel themselves or engage in propulsion, a forward momentum, stopping on a dime, things like that. There's almost this, And so once you put that up, I was like, oh my gosh, I see that all the time. The toes turned out, like, so I think that once again, I mean, you have a huge opportunity. I'm super excited to see what you create with that, and love to see how that transitions to other avenues, especially if the band is taking into account. I'm trying to remember the word that you used, but becoming much more of the correlation of the dance and visually or aesthetically pleasing and structured and in form and that fluidity. So that's so cool. That's so cool. I think, you're killing it, girl. You are seriously killing it. That's so cool. Yeah, I'm so glad we got to connect, because your whole story, from everything I've heard about you, everything that we've discussed, I've really enjoyed connecting with you. And like I said, it's truly inspiring. Like, I'm getting fired. I know nothing about band, but I'm getting fired up. Like, I'm literally thinking about someone holding a trumpet, doing the lunge matrix. And I'm like, oh man, like, if they are able to shift the foot position, they'll be able to come in and out of that quicker, like more energy efficient. They have more energy to give to the actual like volume that they're trying to push out. I'm like, yo, let's go. Like, yes, that's awesome, Ellie. Heck yeah. So, I mean, I really appreciate the time. We got a few minutes left here. I really appreciate the time that you took to connect. This is exactly the conversation I've had with Michael Hughes and CJ, as well as some of the others in Gymnazo, the MDMC program. This is exactly where my heart lies, is being able to connect the same way you said you connected to Alex Kanellis and the things that you've connected to with CJ and so on and so forth. That's this movement, this collective is about that. And I love that. I think that right there is where this world is hopefully going, is more connection, more love, share it. Michael said something the other day. He said, if it can't be massively shared, is it actually a good thing? You know, and like I've been kind of processing that because the better it is, the more love we put into it, care, like the more we want to get it out there, the more we want to share it. So, on my end, thank you so much. Really appreciated this time. And yeah, with our last couple minutes, if you have anything you want to add or closing statements or.
No, I just appreciate you giving me the opportunity to connect, Nick. And I love the work you're doing with building up the collective. I think this kind of connection is the most important work that we can all be doing right now because there's so much disconnection. So doing the opposite and moving towards the opposite with so much optimism and love and just like love for sharing the practice of not even just like fundamental human movement or just conversation. I think that in itself is so critically important.
Right.
And we can use our tools, we can use social media, and we can use these platforms to help further those things in a positive way and just in the space of coming from a sharing standpoint. And I think that's really cool because it's not about the competition, it's how can we all collectively do this together and continue to grow every aspect of our practices.
Yes, 100%. Ended on a good note. All right, I'm not even gonna say anything more. That's perfect. Again, thank you for your time. For those of you that are listening, and I'll put this out on social media. I'll probably put it up on YouTube. I'll send it to you as well, Ellie. But this is Ellie Henson, Hardcore Henson, MDMC. She's got a rope flow practice, influence in the band community. And I really appreciated the time, Ellie.
Thank you, sir.
All right. I'll see you, all right?
All right. See you later.